Hey nerds, Todd Simmons coming back at you with a little more Toddomation. So in the last video, the last thing that we did was we got our CEOS image uploaded to our Codespaces. So that's where we were here, right? You'll see it at 100% and 549 megs or whatever the size file is that you're using. But you may have noticed I'm in a different Bubba shirt today. So reason being is this video was not made the same time that all of the previous videos were made. The reason being is I found a little snag, specifically when it comes to GitHub and Codespaces in a non-private repo or a public repo. It doesn't install all of the VS Code objects that I would like to have by default. And really, the only one that it didn't install was the Containerlab. So in your repo, when you come back online, right? So this is where we're at. We're in the repo. We have our Codespaces. Our Codespaces is up. You probably do not have this Containerlab option that I'm specifying here because Codespaces is going to make you install it and agree to it the very, very first time. And it took me a little while to figure that one out. Once you actually get it installed, the automation that I wrote will automatically bring it up and add it. But the very first time inside a repo, specifically a public repo, it might do it in the private and I just didn't notice it before, you're going to have to add it. So let me make sure that you know how to add it. And it's actually going to just be in the extension. So you come to the extensions folder, you would type Containerlab just as I did here. And instead of the settings cog here, you would have the install. So do me a favor, go ahead and install that. We've already installed the command line tool, but the first way that you're going to get to these devices is not going to be using the command line tool. That's what's going to launch it. But we're actually going to use Containerlab to show you how to get into the devices, just in case you're not interested in, learning how to SSH to them over a VPN. So everybody go ahead and get that Containerlab installed, and then we can move on to the next part. So coming back now, we have our files. Okay, we did our upload just as we saw here. Okay, we're going to use our VS Code locally in addition to our VS Code image here. But I'm just going to keep this one on the screen for now. So you're back at the terminal. Just in case you don't have a terminal, remember it's simple. You just come up to the hamburger up here. You can go to terminal. And you go to new terminal and it'll give you a terminal. And you can have many terminals over here. And you're actually going to see we're going to have a lot of terminals over here because this is where the console connection for your switches is going to show up. So I'm just going to close that first one out. A couple of things that we want to do. First off, we want to rerun the post create script that I created. That way it'll actually load the lab for you. And we can do that really simply by just the ./ and that is in the dev. Let me see where I'm at. I'm in CLab demos. That's fine. I should be able to run that directory .dev. That's why. So it said ./ Let me retype that just to make sure that you got it. So ./ and it's in the .dev container. And the command is this post create basic. Post create command sh. Now, this one's already run. That's what started everything before. And if you remember, it stopped because it didn't find the CEOS lab. Well, it's going to find the CEOS lab this time. So we're going to just run that command again. And we want to make sure that it finds it. And I have a couple of health checks in here just to make sure it goes. Now, check this out. Found local image, right? So it's there. You put it in the images folder, and it's up there. So now it's actually going to take it and it's going to start creating the Dockers for it. Now, this is automatically going to launch the Containerlab as well. You'll see that over here. Once the Containerlab actually launches, then you'll start to see pop-ups. And I want to show you what I did in the time that it's going to take for this to start. I want to look at the actual topology. Okay, so if we come back up here and we look at the topology file that we have in Basic Lab, okay, and we look at this topoc lab, and I'm just going to make this a little smaller. Okay, this is the YAML file that's used to actually create the Containerlab and all of the connections between the switches. It's a very, very simple file. As you can see from the top, I've defined a management network. I've named the network that we're going to have, so it's going to say CLab management. I've created a management verf, and I've specified the CEOS image that we're going to use. Okay. And we can see over here, we're starting to get some items, this open in browser, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Okay, but the Containerlab is now running, just to show you. As we can see it, it's actually starting to bring up our devices. But once it's done, it'll actually tell us it's done. But I want to go back to the topology file real quick. So we've got the nodes. The nodes are actually the devices that I have in the lab. There's 2 spines, there's 4 leaves. Okay, so this is just a comment with DC1. So I've got the DC1 spine. Its kind is Arista CEOS, which I have defined up here and here. I've also determined that the IPs that management is going to use. Now you have to have a management network because the Codespaces has to be able to reach in and get to these particular devices. So it's going to create itself an IP on this network, which is going to be 192.168.0.1. And then that's how we're actually going to get to these devices. So as you can see, I have them all set up. A couple of things that I want you to notice is this startup delay. Now, this is going to allow you to have more switches with less CPU and memory. So it's really, really important. If we tried to start all these devices up at once with just 4 CPUs in our Codespaces, it would fail. It would just say it ran out of CPU, or quite potentially, since we only have 16 gigs of RAM, it'll tell you that it ran out of RAM if we try to start them all at once. So I have this delay factor that's going to work in your favor. And as you can see down here, it's still going. It's actually creating our lab for us. Okay. Then we've got spine 2. It's going to pause 10 seconds. Now also notice this init configs. These are where the configurations are for when it comes up. And you can see that over here. It's in the init configs. And then here's the initial configurations that I provided. They're very simple. There's an admin username that doesn't have a password. And then there's an Ansible username, because we're going to get into AVD with this, that has Ansible as the username. So very, very simple stuff for you to be able to get into. The last thing that I want you to look at is this port. What I've done is, if you don't want to work on these devices directly inside Codespaces, I have it set up, and I'm going to show you how we can create a tunnel in the next video from your individual workstation into Codespaces. It's just a quick VPN tunnel. And then you can actually access the devices using something like, Secure CRT or PuTTY. Now, I'm going to show you a Secure CRT. It's the SSH program that I've used forever. I think it's the best one out there, quite frankly. I'm not paid to say that. It's a really, really good program. So let's go back and see if our Codespace actually fit. And it did. Look, so now we've got a lab deployed message. And it tells us, here's our actual name for the devices. It creates host names, and it's what it's going to use to actually get to them. And our state is running. Let me raise this up just so we can see it. So it says everything's running. Now, once again, I really hope that you install the Containerlab like we talked about. So look over here. This is the Containerlab, and it says one running lab now. So when we click on it, there it is. That's the name of the lab, right? We called it Basic Lab. If you hit this greater than symbol, here's the actual devices that are in the lab, which is, I just showed you the topology file, spine 1, spine 2, and then leaf 1, leaf 2, leaf 3, leaf 4. You're ready to connect. All these devices are connected, and we can test that by going, let's say, just go to spine 1. Now, here are your options to get into the device. This is the console, and this is how it's going to connect right here. It's SSH is what it says. And I guess that's true. It's not really a console port, but it's going to appear like a console port. So when I click on that, look, it immediately changes my window and brings me over to SSH. And I'm going to make this a little wider so we can see it. I'm going to pull this agent mode out. So as you can see, we've SSH'd to C Lab, Basic Lab, DC1, Spine 1, and it automatically logged us in. The reason being is I've told it it's got a username of admin, but there's no password on the admin account, just like if you started up a brand new Arista device and you had console access to it. So real quick, let's just take a look. So we can do a show run, and let's look at the entire configuration from beginning to end, just like we would expect it to see. Okay, the basic settings that I've done, obviously the secret here is going to be auto-generated, but it's Ansible and Ansible, in case anybody's wondering. And then the admin privilege has no password. Obviously, we would want to change that, but I'm trying to make it easy for you to first get into it. And a lot of these are some default stuff, right? Here's the first thing that I put in there, the hostname DC1 Spine 1. I did change this management API HTTP commands to use HTTP just because sometimes on the CEOS, if you are going to be doing any of the AVD labs, the first one, if it changes that to HTTPS, you're going to have lots of problems with it. Okay. And then look, here's our Ethernet interfaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we have interface management 0. Interesting point. You can't turn off LLDP on the management interface during the initial boot. So I've tried writing into my initial startup configs the no LLDP transmit and no LLDP receive on this interface, and I'm going to show you why. It doesn't stick, and I've tried it every way, so it's something that you have to put on afterwards. So we're going to come back in here. We're going to do a show LLDP neighbor, okay? And you see all of the management devices connected, okay? We don't want this. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to recommend that you do in your new lab is you just turn that off. Okay, real simple to do. You just do a config. You go into int MA0 and you do no LLDP, and we'll do receive, and then we'll do no LLDP transmit. Now you'll see that the TTL on that is 120. So it's going to stay there for 120 seconds, and then you'll start to see those items drop off just because we really only want to see what we're directly connected to. Now, it just so happens we are directly connected to all of those, but we don't want to see it on management 0. Okay. So at this point, your devices are up. Your lab is completely operational, right? You can start setting IPs however you want to build the lab. The way that I've connected it, and I'm going to go back into the topology file here real quick to show you this. The way that I've actually got it connected is so you can do a couple of different things with the lab. If you want to make it a layer 2 leaf spine, you can. If you want to make it a layer 3 leaf spine, you can. And looking at the Topo lab file here, at the very bottom, these are the links. Okay, this is how you tell the Containerlab which devices are connected to each other, and more specifically on what interfaces. Looking at this, we can see my leaf 1 to leaf 2. These are the peer links in case you want to do an MLAG. Okay. We've got that on leaf 1, leaf 2. We've got that on leaf 3, leaf 4. Then I move into the leaf to the spine links, and we can see that we have all of the links here. By the way, you only have to list these links once. You don't have to list them for the leaves and the spines. Once you create the link, then the link's up. So you don't have to do it for both sides. In other words, I don't have to do DC1, leaf 1, Ethernet 1, and then do this, and then switch it backwards and do another line for that. That's not necessary. Okay. So then we can see I've got all of my DC1 leaf 1s, leaf 2, leaf 3, and leaf 4 connected to spine 1 and spine 2 and on the interfaces. Containerlab, when you specify the interfaces here, will automatically create those interfaces, but it will not create any other interfaces. So if you go into your running configuration, or if you go into config and type int ET7, it'll show you int ET7 and that it created it. But unless you have it in this file, it's not going to work. This is your topology file. This is how everything is being built. Okay. And then the last one, spine 1 to spine 2, I have peer links for those as well. Just in case you wanted to do a layer 2 leaf spine, we would need these two to talk to each other. So you can do an MLAG or some sort of VERP in between them. So at this point, your lab's up. The only thing that you need to do to be able to get to each of the devices is come down here to this Containerlab, okay, and just open up your SSH session. So there's spine 2. I like to do these in order. I'm really picky about the order that my devices show up whenever I'm working on them, just because I've trained myself that they're always going to be in that particular order. So I always like to go spines at the top and then my leaves. So now that once you open it up over here, notice it opened these automatically. We were already in this one. But spine, they open automatically. Why? Because I created the username admin and I said it was no password and I told Containerlab that. So you'll see that all of these come up immediately. So if I go into leaf 4, show LLDP neighbor, okay, notice it does not have spine 1 on here anymore for MA0. Because remember, we went to MA0 and we turned that off on spine 1. If I come back to spine 1, I get out of my configuration mode. I do a show LLDP neighbor again, and see, I only have neighbors on my Ethernet interfaces, which is what you want. It does get a little confusing when you see, MA0 have connections to everything. But that's just how the Containerlab works, right? It's obviously not connected to everything, but it is kind of on the same cloud-based hub, just to say, use that term very loosely. But this is it. Your lab's operational. You're ready to start popping commands in here, okay? Save your configuration, okay? Once you're done with this lab, you don't have to destroy it. It's going to remember your configuration, okay? In the next video, I'm actually going to show you, after you've closed the lab, the steps that you need to do to bring it back up, because the lab is already created. You can't just redeploy the lab. That's not going to work. You do redeploy the lab, but you can't do it from the CLI the way that I showed you. So hopefully you're enjoying it. Lab it up. Get some experience on this Arista EOS. And if you need any help with it, always, like, subscribe, send me a message. You'll see I'll respond and give you some exact information. Anyway, we'll talk to y'all later, nerds. Bye.